It was midnight at Collins Defense Group headquarters. The marble floors gleamed under dim emergency lights as 25-year-old CEO Evelyn Collins stepped from a private elevator toward her waiting car. Before she could reach it, 3 men in black tactical gear emerged from the shadows. Masks, rifles, precision in every motion. Not amateurs, mercenaries. They forced her from the vehicle, zip-tied her wrists, and pulled a hood over her head. Her muffled protests were ignored. Within seconds, the heiress of one of America's largest defense firms vanished into the night. Hours later, she sat bound to a chair in an abandoned warehouse, pulse thundering against the tape at her wrists. Every sound made her flinch. The creak of metal, the dripping of water, footsteps echoing in the dark. Then came movement from above, a faint whisper of rope against steel. A shadow dropped silently into the room. The intruder moved like smoke. 3 precise strikes. 3 bodies collapsing before they could react. The fight was over before Evelyn could even process it. When the dim light fell across the man's face, her breath caught. It was Jack, her husband, on paper only, the man she had forced into obscurity, within her own company, the man she had dismissed, humiliated, and ignored, and the man who had just saved her life. 3 years earlier, Evelyn had inherited her father's empire after his death in a helicopter crash. Robert Collins had built Collins Defense Group from a small engineering firm into a multinational supplier for the Pentagon and NATO. When Evelyn took over at 22, the boardroom whispered she was too young, too cold, too female. She proved them wrong. Brilliant, unflinching, utterly composed. Behind her back, they called her Ice Queen. But beneath the flawless surface lived exhaustion, grief, and the memory of a promise made on her father's deathbed. "Marry Jack Dawson," he had whispered, his voice raspy with pain. "Our family owes him a life debt. This is how you repay it." Evelyn had agreed, not out of affection or even curiosity, but pure duty. The wedding had been private, uncelebrated. She never moved in with him, never introduced him as her husband, never even acknowledged at the office. To her, he was a burden she was forced to carry, so she gave him a low-level security position and considered her obligation fulfilled. She never wondered why her father had trusted him so completely. Jack Dawson lived quietly in the shadows. At 36, he carried the calm intensity of a man who had once lived by discipline and danger. Few knew that Master Sergeant Jack Dawson had served in Delta Force, conducting Black Ops missions across 14 countries. His record was classified, his scars invisible. But Kandahar had broken him. 4 hostages died because of a decision that took him 1.44 seconds too long to make. The official report cleared him, but Jack never forgave himself. He left the Army, carrying the ghost of that failure wherever he went. When Robert Collins offered him a way to start over, a marriage, a new identity, a chance to protect someone who mattered, Jack accepted, not for redemption, for penance. He spent 3 years patrolling the lower floors of his wife's company, unseen by executives, unnoticed by the woman he'd sworn to protect. Until that night in the warehouse, the drive back to the city was silent. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, wrists raw, heart still hammering. She kept glancing at the man beside her, struggling to reconcile the quiet security guard with the lethal operator who had dismantled trained mercenaries in seconds. "You should go to a hospital," Jack said evenly, eyes on the road. "I'm fine," she muttered. "They might have drugged you." Her voice sharpened. "And you know about standard kidnapping procedures because—" Jack's jaw tightened. "Pull over," she snapped. To her surprise, he did, calmly guiding the car to the shoulder of the deserted highway. "Who are you, really?" Evelyn demanded. "Don't feed me that security guard nonsense. I saw what you did." He was quiet for a long moment, the car filled only with the tick of the hazard lights. "I'm exactly who your father said I was," he said finally. "Someone who owed him. I'm repaying that debt by keeping you safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." His tone left no room for argument. Evelyn wanted to press further, but exhaustion dragged her down. She leaned her head back against the seat, the night blurring around her. The next morning, she couldn't let it go. Canceling her meetings, she drove across town to a modest apartment building. Jack's address, listed in company records. She sat outside for hours before curiosity overcame pride. The lock was sophisticated, but her old credit card trick still worked. Inside, the apartment was bare but orderly. Worn leather couch, shelves stacked with books on strategy, history, and surprisingly, literature. Hemingway, Dostoevsky, Conrad. What stopped her cold was a wall beside his bed, a precise grid of photos. Men in uniform, arms slung around each other, smiling through fatigue and dirt. Jack stood among them in several, alive in a way she'd never seen him. On the bedside table, a leather case held rows of military medals, bronze stars, purple hearts. Then she found the footlocker. Inside lay newspaper clippings and an old photograph. Local hero saves child from dog attack. A teenage boy, arm bandaged, stood beside a hospital bed where a small girl lay smiling. Evelyn froze. The girl was her, age 7, and the boy, Jack. Her knees gave out. The photo trembled in her hands. This was the debt her father had spoken of. Jack hadn't just saved her life last night. He had saved it decades ago. At precisely 6:17 p.m., Jack entered the apartment. No surprise, no anger. Breaking and entering, he said mildly. Still a crime, even for COs. Evelyn held up the photograph. Were you ever going to tell me? He hesitated. No. Why not? It wasn't relevant. Her temper flared. You saved my life as a child and again last night, and you didn't think that was relevant? Jack leaned against the counter, his face unreadable. Would it have changed anything? Would you have treated me differently? Or just resented being indebted to someone you think beneath you? She had no answer. The kettle whistled. He poured tea and handed her a cup. She didn't touch it. Who were those men last night? She asked instead. Professionals, he said. Whoever hired them knew enough to bypass your building security. I'm still finding out who. And how does a security guard do that? I wasn't always a security guard. Her eyes flicked to the wall of photographs. Delta Force. He raised an eyebrow. Your father never told you? He told me nothing except that I had to marry you. She exhaled shakily. I want the truth, Jack. All of it. He studied her for a long moment, then finally spoke. I wanted to protect people, he said quietly. But I failed. Kandahar. For hostages. My decision killed them. He told her everything about the mission, the 1.44 seconds, the guilt that never left him. Your father was my commanding officer before he retired. Jack said. He believed in me when no one else did. When everything fell apart, he offered me purpose again. And the dog attack... A faint smile ghosted across his lips. Coincidence. I was 16, working summer cleanup at the park. You wandered off from your nanny. When that Rottweiler broke its chain, I just reacted. 47 stitches, she murmured. You nearly lost your arm. He shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. Not everyone would have risked their life for a stranger's child, she said softly. He looked at her, and for the first time, the distance between them felt smaller. The marriage, he continued, was your father's idea of making sure I'd always be close enough to protect you, even after he was gone. The realization hit her like a blow. All this time she had thought she was repaying a debt. She had been the one being protected. Why did you agree to it? She whispered. To being treated like you were nothing? Jack's answer came low and simple. Because I deserved worse. Evelyn's throat tightened. For the first time in years, tears filled her eyes. No one deserves to carry that kind of pain alone, she said. And for a heartbeat, she saw the soldier's mask slip, saw the man beneath it. In that moment, Evelyn Collins made a decision that would change both their lives forever. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jack's face, calm, haunted, utterly alone. For years, she thought strength meant being untouchable, emotionless, perfect. Now, she realized it was the opposite. Real strength was surviving despite the cracks. The next morning, she walked into the Collins Defense Group boardroom 10 minutes early. For once not in armor, but in truth. Effective immediately, she announced. Jack Dawson is reinstated to executive security oversight. He will have full authority to investigate last night's attack. The board members exchanged uneasy looks. Evelyn didn't care. For the first time, her voice carried more power than the title on her nameplate. Within days, Jack uncovered what the police couldn't: encrypted payments, offshore accounts, internal access codes leaked from someone deep inside the company. The trail led to a familiar name: Margaret Hale, the company's chief operating officer, Evelyn's mentor and her father's closest advisor. Evelyn refused to believe it. Hale had helped her through college, guided her through the company takeover. She'd trusted her like family. But when Jack confronted her with evidence, fingerprints, bank transfers, recorded calls, Hale's mask cracked. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Hale hissed. You weren't supposed to die. You were supposed to lose control. The board would have voted you out, and we'd save the company before you ruined it. Evelyn's stomach turned. You were willing to kidnap me for a vote? You're young, emotional, and reckless. Hale spat. I built this empire with your father, and you hand it to soldiers and janitors. Jack stepped forward, quiet but lethal. You'll answer for this. The next morning, Hale was escorted out by federal agents. The news exploded across financial media. Collins COO arrested in CO kidnapping conspiracy. Stock prices wobbled, then rebounded stronger than ever. Investors saw something new in Evelyn, not just authority, but humanity. Weeks later, Evelyn stood on a hill overlooking the Collins research campus, her father's legacy, now hers to protect. Jack joined her, hands in his pockets. So what now? He asked. She smiled faintly. Now we build something that actually matters. He raised a brow. The Dawson Foundation, she said softly. For veterans, PTSD treatment, reintegration programs, scholarships for their kids. You spent your life saving people, Jack. Let me help you save the ones still fighting. He stared at her for a long moment, then looked away. You don't owe me that. I know, she said. That's why it's real. A quiet breeze tugged at her hair. For the first time, silence between them didn't feel heavy. It felt whole. Months passed. Evelyn transformed her company from a cold defense machine into a humanitarian powerhouse, merging military innovation with civilian aid projects, funding trauma recovery centers, hiring veterans into leadership roles. Reporters called it the Collins Revolution. But within the walls of the Foundation's modest office, away from headlines and investors, it was something smaller and infinitely more human. Jack worked there, not as an executive, but as a trainer and mentor. He didn't like the spotlight. He preferred teaching young veterans how to rebuild, how to live again. Sometimes, Evelyn watched from her office window as he laughed with them, the weight on his shoulders a little lighter each day. It wasn't until Foundation's first gala that she realized how far they'd come. The hall shimmered with light and glass. Generals, politicians, and survivors all gathered to celebrate a year of progress. When Evelyn stepped on stage, she didn't read from a script. Strength, she said, voice steady, isn't the absence of fear or pain. It's the courage to face them and still keep going. My father taught me how to lead, but one man taught me what it means to protect. Her gaze found Jack in the crowd, standing in the back, as always half in shadow. This foundation exists because of him, she continued. Because sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones in command. They're the ones who never stop serving. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. But Jack's eyes stayed on hers, quiet, proud, and full of something neither had dared name. Later, after the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Evelyn found him alone on the terrace. You should have told them who you were, she said. You deserve the credit. I don't need credit, he said. I just need to know it meant something. It did, she whispered. They stood in silence, city lights stretching below like scattered stars. I used to think my father's debt was a burden, she said finally. But it wasn't. It was a gift, the chance to meet someone who reminded me why we fight at all. Jack looked at her then, really looked, and the walls between them finally crumbled. No words, no grand declarations, just understanding. Two soldiers, different wars, same peace. In the months that followed, Evelyn and Jack worked side by side, Partners in every sense except the one that required a signature. They didn't need titles anymore. Not CEO and security guard. Not heiress and protector. Just two survivors, rebuilding something better than what they'd lost. Rumors swirled, of course. The press speculated endlessly about their relationship. Evelyn never confirmed or denied. She simply smiled and said, "He's family." And to Jack, that meant everything. Because for a man who had once believed he didn't deserve love, being seen, truly seen, was more than redemption. It was freedom. 1 year later, the Dawson Foundation opened its first residential recovery center in Virginia. Veterans lined the courtyard, clapping as Evelyn cut the ribbon beside Jack. When she handed him the scissors, he shook his head. "You do it," he said. "You built this." "No," she said, placing her hand over his. "We did." The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras clicked. But in that single moment, surrounded by sunlight and laughter, Jack felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. That night, as the last guest left, Evelyn stood on the balcony of the new center. The wind carried the faint scent of pine and earth. Jack joined her quietly. "You still think you don't deserve happiness?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I'm starting to learn how to." She smiled. "Good, because you're stuck with me now." He laughed, the rare, quiet kind that reaches eyes. "Guess some debts," he said, "are worth keeping." And there, under a sky unbroken by war or pain, Evelyn Collins and Jack Dawson finally found the thing neither had ever been fighting for, but both had always needed.